Hi Martin.
Hey.
Welcome to NetGroup. I'm Martin and this is Martin. My position is in NetGroup, head of e-government solutions, and Martin's position is?
I'm the National Digital Advisor for the Government of Estonia. This means that I advise the Estonian Prime Minister and government on matters of information society and innovation. This basically makes me the kind of in-house visionary for the Estonian government. So I'm basically responsible for everything that's somehow new. May this be self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, issues in cybersecurity, or perhaps even participatory democracy. So I think of myself as a kind of a governance architect. So my job is to filter out what is actually important in this domain of technology and innovation, and then explain this to the government and to the society and make it work as a whole thing.
So what is important at the moment for the Estonian government in the digital matters?
So currently Estonian government is strongly working in actually incorporating artificial intelligence into the existing procedures. Currently I think we have about, I'm guessing now, I think we have 40 live narrow AI use cases. Which means that artificial intelligence has already entered the domain of e-governance and is helping to make our everyday matters much easier. And there is various sets of examples, but one of the most difficult things that I see in the public sector is to actually build a community of public sector people who actually know about using artificial intelligence. And knowing that this AI, or the buzzwords in AI, there's a lot of hype around them. So public sector needs to actually understand that first things first, AI is not necessarily 1 and 0. It's mainly about the potential and the options, and the difficulty for public sector is that you might not know what the outcome really is. But in order to actually implement artificial intelligence in the public sector in an efficient way, then you need to build some capacity, some know-how, a community around that. And that's what I'm doing. We're building a community around the AI. And I think we have a pretty good learning curve already, but there is still a lot to be done.
So to narrow it down to an example that we have been working on here in NetGroup together with the Estonian government. This is KrattAI. And KrattAI as a concept is much larger than what we do at the moment. But I would like you to explain the wider AI plan for Kratt. Kratt meaning the basically an assistant for the citizen, for a citizen who usually would interact with the government in multiple digital ways. But how is the big plan behind KrattAI?
So first things first, before explaining the big picture, I think we need to explain the audience what Kratt actually means. In Estonian mythology, Kratt is a mythological creature, a kind of a servant that is made up by random pieces. Let's take this chocolate, this glass, and water, and somehow I put things together and I can make an assistant for myself. This is very different from other potential mythological creatures like, I don't know, jinn that comes out of a bottle or something like that. Mainly because Kratt is like your servant and does everything for you, but also because you yourself, whoever you are, can make one for yourself. In Estonian government, we'll be starting using this metaphor for a Kratt, for narrow AI applications. And the reason for that is that if you talk about AI, then basically you have a strategical communication issue already embedded into this question. Which basically means that if you talk about AI to a crowd that doesn't know anything about artificial intelligence, then they tend to get this Terminator look. They envision this robot with half of the face blown away and with this red eye, and definitely they are humanoid. They look like similar to humans, and definitely they want to destroy everybody. And this is the one metaphor that we want to avoid, and that's why this the mythological creature of a kratt in Estonia actually has helped us a lot, because in Estonian folklore and mythology, kratt is something that, like, I have 3 children in my family, none of them know what an AI is, but all of them know what a kratt is, because this is so deeply embedded in Estonian culture. But we needed to have that metaphor, because to make this whole new endeavor of finding governmental solutions in the domain of AI much more, let's say, easier to comprehend and understand, and having this metaphor for a kratt helps us a lot.
So what should the kratt do?
Well, I as a civil servant, I think the kratt should do all the bureaucratic bullshit bingo for me. I don't want to do anything of that. I want all of those things done automatically with my consent. I'm the owner and master of that automatic...
So by the time you retire, you claim that your position will be sort of void, abolished, and kratt will take over your job?
No. I'm talking about automating all regular bureaucratic routines. I don't have a regular routine. So I'm educated as an architect city planner and I went to an art school, so I still consider my personal job to be highly creative. I think that different AIs can help a lot to automate some of the routines that I as a civil servant do. But I don't think so that all of the jobs should be automated. I'm talking more about the routine procedures, the everyday mundane stupid stuff that people and bureaucrats need to do. And that's one of the main goals actually on how we see in the Estonian government side what the artificial intelligence can actually do is to automate all the stupid routine works.
For example, in the context of this project that we do with the Estonian government, this is actually automating the client and government relationship. So if you are a citizen, a client of government, then you can basically ask anything from the government with the help of a smart assistant, right?
Well, let's see a bit of a wider picture first. First, in Estonia, we call, in English, we call the project KrattAI. In Estonia, the metaphor is actually bureaucrat, which is again a play with words. It's about combining bureaucracy and this kratt, or this automated or AI, which basically would call automated bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. So what we are doing with KrattAI is currently the most important thing happening in Estonian public sector in terms of digital governance. We are actually reinventing the way people communicate with the government, plus the government communicates back to the people. Because throughout the years of a modern bureaucracy where public sector is scattered around in different silos, and then I think in every country there's a problem that if a person actually needs something or wants something or wants to communicate with the government, then not necessarily they know who's the right person or the organization, how to actually communicate and where you can get a solution to your problem.
So how this will be altered now, how this will be changed with bureaucrat?
So I think the main thing about KrattAI, or bureaucrat as we call it in Estonia, is that yes, we're building a chatbot, but chatbot is not necessarily the biggest innovation here. Rather, it's an innovation of the interoperability framework for chatbots. So what we are trying to build here is network of thousands and thousands of different chatbots and AIs, and how these very different organizational entities can actually communicate seamlessly with each other. What that means for the citizen is that if you go to a website of one organization and you have a question that actually is pointed to another organization, but you as a human not necessarily know that, then the chatbots themselves can actually interoperate and exchange the information. In longer run, what that does mean is that in the first pilot phase, yes, we are talking about a very simple chatbot and the interoperability network that's in the back side. But the main thing what we see bureaucrat doing is actually becoming more actively participating. So in a most simple way, bureaucrat is your personal assistant who will do all the bureaucratic bullshit bingo for you. This means that it will help you communicate with all of the government different entities from one location. So this means that, for example, if you don't necessarily even need to go to a governmental website, but you I don't know, mainly I, for example, use WhatsApp for a lot. So I can talk to government through WhatsApp, through one point, and I can talk to the whole of government through this point. And it will be an automated conversation. But the next steps, I think, are even more interesting, because the bureaucrat or the Kratt will become also an active player, which means that the Kratt itself can actually provide services for you. And as an example of that would be that if with a regular chatbot, I would go and ask that, hey, where can I get a fishing license? Because I'm here with my friends and for a particular reason I want to go fishing, right, but I want to do it legally. Okay, I ask this chatbot. So the chatbot probably tells me that, oh, you can get this fishing license from this environmental agency, for example, and here's the link for that. Okay, I click on that, I get the license, I can do it anyway. But hopefully next year we can have a more active part, which would, on the same use case, would basically mean that if I write this chatbot that, hey, where can I get a fishing license? Then the KrattAI or the bureaucrat will say, oh, do you want me to do it for you? And I say, of course. And then I basically share my location. For example, I'm on the island of Saaremaa, and bureaucrat knows it, shares that to the environmental agency, makes this application automatically, and in more or less 20 seconds, here is your fishing license. So I think that's kind of a use case explains a bit where we are driving towards, because the point is that, for example, with taxes in Estonia we have had automated tax declarations or fairly automated ones since 2001, and I've spent probably less than 15 minutes in the whole of my lifetime declaring taxes. But if we can actually do all of the routine bureaucracy in an automated way with the human consent, right, then I think we can actually redefine what bureaucracy is.
So we're talking here two different paths that can merge. So basically one of them is citizen asking government for any services, or government knowing that citizen is, you know, somewhere doing something, already offering a full service for the citizen. So basically, it's being this a tax declaration, if that is a routine that person every year, a citizen every year has to do. So basically what Estonia has done already is to pre-fill this DAX declaration for you, for me, and I only spend time of confirming that. So now the second tier service, helping the citizen actually to get service location-based and his or her action-based. Is that what you're talking about?
A bit, but I would rephrase that. Yes, in Estonia we are talking about proactive services. So it's like the case you mentioned that the government is knowing that you, I don't know, need to declare your taxes in March in Estonia, right, for example. But with the concept of bureaucrat or KrattAI, the idea is that this personal assistant legally also belongs to you, which means that it's not about the government knowing that you need it. It's about your personal assistant who you own legally, okay, actually knowing that you, because one of the very important things to this concept is that in Estonia we truly believe in the idea that I'm the owner of my own personal data. And yes, the government is merely providing me a service of keeping my personal data safe in different locations. But I'm still the owner and I manage the rights to that data. So this bureaucrat or KrattAI in long term will be the assistant that manages all of those things. So it's about not government knowing that you need something, it's about your personal assistant knowing that you need something, because the big brother scenario is the one that we are trying to basically avoid here. It's not about building this interoperability of those chatbots, and it's about basically building a distributed model where each of the citizen is the owner of their own data, but also in this world of artificial intelligence. Basically.
So let's imagine that this cupboard at the back here is the so-called vault for your personal data. Maybe government at the moment is one of the keepers of this vault, and you give government basically some rights to operate, to gather some data for you and to keep it in this vault. So basically now you're talking about that, putting this vault to use for your own benefit as a citizen, right?
Yeah, basically. But again, in the context of Estonia, there is not one cupboard, but there is actually like 1,000 different cupboards where bits and pieces are all distributed, and you are the one that actually manages the rights and then the consent around it, basically.
I think that one concept that needs yet to be clarified is the rights management, because at the moment, you just explained that the project we're doing with the government at the moment is about building a network of chatbots who are getting access only to the public data at the moment, right? Yeah. So the next stage is to actually access your private data, right? Yeah. So how is the consent managed in this case? Would you need to log in somehow, or how would you actually identify yourself?
So yeah, having a strong digital identity is the basis of all of this interoperability and framework. So yes, in order to make this, to leverage this kind of a capacity, basically you need to have a strong identity like we have it here in Estonia.
But if you don't have it, can you still apply this sort of a chatbot solution?
Yeah, you can, but without the login, you cannot do the legally binding contracts like I mentioned with the fishing license, for example. But one of the things that also kind of intrigues me in terms of getting also, for example, the private sector data involved. And the use case for me is that, okay, nowadays most of us have smartphones. Probably there is quite a lot of different apps on those smartphones. Like in terms of...
too many.
Exactly, that's my point. Like, for example, here in Tallinn, in terms of using the electric scooters, we have Bolt, we have Tool, we have Prime, we have some other stuff. Like, I just need to use a scooter. Like, I don't want to download all of those apps. So one of the points actually that we are trying to do is that if in long term we can also get the private sector data somehow incorporated, then the goal and the kind of vision for Bürokrat or KrattAI is also that this personal assistant could potentially help me with everything. It would be the one-stop shop solution for all different practical needs. And in long term, the goal is not to be just a chatbot, but basically you can use an interface from Siri or Alexa or whoever voice assistant that we have in the private sector to just have this as a potential user interface to our network, the governmental network of trust and the consent. So that basically probably I'm hoping that I'm guessing that in a year or maybe 1.5 years I can tell Siri that, hey, I need to open a company. And okay, Siri asks, what's the name of this company? So this I need to spell because it's legally binding and I need to get it correct. I will write the name of this company. Next time Siri will ask that, hey, do you want to be a VIT like number as well? Okay. And in basically 30 seconds I have a company opened. And also they can ask that, hi, do you want accounting services? Okay, bank account? Yes. All of those things set up in 30 seconds. It probably makes my life easier.
I'll take your word for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, we've been talking about Estonia a lot, but I'd like you to spell out for us whether this is something unique to Estonia or there are prime examples of similar frameworks of AI for government services in the world.
So basically, chatbots, for one example, are relatively popular, have been throughout the past years. So there is lots of deployments in various cases. But most of these chatbots are basically one-time thing or one service for one particular authority, which basically helps, yes, with the client communication, but more or less that's it. When we are talking about an interoperability framework for chatbots, so basically a network of bots working together, this is quite unique, but there are some good examples, and mainly from our next door neighbor in Finland. Finland has had a project and a goal to build something what they call Aurora Ai, which basically is quite similar to the thing that we are doing. Basically a network of chatbots and how those communicate together. Because again, the problem in the public sector is that getting all the information together in one channel is very difficult, because public sector itself consists of lots and lots of different silo towers. So whenever governments, wherever they are, start to solve this problem, then one of the things that they will always encounter is that how do you actually get the data into the chatbot?
Wow, I mean, this is exactly, everybody are talking about, breaking the silos and doing sort of like a mega big database or somehow getting this data from these silos, right? So what would be your suggestion for any government who wants to build sort of a chatbot network? What do you have to do? 1, 2, 3.
The biggest and the most difficult job, and this is the one that I'm currently responsible also in Estonia, is basically it's about changing the way communication people in different parts of the public sector work on an everyday basis. And what this means is that basically, because all of the different authorities and entities and parts of the public sector, they know their domain the best. Like, I don't know nothing about, I don't know, social welfare, but the communication people and the experts in the social welfare authority actually know those things, and I don't. So they are the only ones who can actually help themselves. But in order for this to work, we need to have basically well, in Estonia, we are not making a centralized database. Estonian whole architecture principles are distributed. So they need to edit and manage their content in a new way. The way they manage and edit this content needs to be data-driven. So you need to actually know what your customer wants, what are the biggest problems that your customer wants, and you answer those questions like that. But the point now is that you don't put your answer into a regular Excel sheet that you share with a couple of colleagues, but you put it into a system that actually connects all of those dots. And what the trick in Estonian side actually is, we're building quite an interesting linked data system. So how do you put the different data bits and pieces, like, I don't know, in times of the COVID pandemic crisis, right. I was working on this master system of questions and answers for the crisis, like from the detail of why we have this emergency situation to the detail that how should I deal with trash in a particular municipality. Right. So that's a lot of information. So, but the biggest hurdle is how do you make the communication people themselves change their everyday procedures so that their contribution could be also utilized by everybody else. In Estonian case, the linked data layer will do the job for us.
So just to get things straight, this bunch of communication people in different government departments, they know their job and they know the most frequently asked questions. So basically we're building something, an AI network of bots which utilizes the knowledge from each of those departments of government and shares it so that a citizen should not know which government department to contact or to reach out. The citizen will just ask a question and he or she will be directed to the right governmental department.
Basically, yes. The first years of deployment of this network of chatbots is highly critical in order to, because again, like we say in Estonia throughout the last 20 years, the digital transformation actually has got very little to do with technology and mostly to do with the changing of the mindset and culture of the people, starting from the bureaucrats themselves. Right. So the first years actually in the deployment of this bureaucrat or KrattAI are mission critical because yes, we are addressing the 80% problem basically. If the bulk of questions that people have for the government are actually all very similar. They are similar things. I don't know, what's the opening hours of that particular office, regular? I don't know, how do I get a driver's license? How do I renew a driver's license? Whatever. These are very, very routine questions. So in the first, I don't know, couple of years, we need to basically address that 80%. So the bulk of questions, but these are highly repeated questions, the frequently asked questions, but the next will go into higher detail, and the next 20% is much more difficult to do because these are all special cases. Like, I don't know, I have a strange company and I got an idea to have a new branch that works with some sort of dangerous chemicals. how do I get the permit to deal with those chemicals?
So now, if you would imagine I am one of the officials in a government department in any country, should I come to you as a advisor for digital and innovation and ask, how can I build this chatbot? Or what's the modus operandi? How will I get to the level that you're talking about?
So first things first, the technological bit that you guys are also building, this will be the first open source governmental chatbot in the world. So open source, which is super important, is it will be free for everybody. And so not only the Estonian government, but basically all the other governments in the world who want can actually utilize this technology and know-how. But if I'm, I don't know, the director or the boss of any authority and would like to utilize it, in Estonia we still believe in distributed architecture. Distributed architecture in a very management point of view is actually about community building. And community building is that everybody needs to carry their own weight. So if you're a boss of an organization and you want to utilize the Estonian chatbot or the bureaucrat or the KrattAI, then yes, there will be a bunch of case studies. The experience can be shared, but everybody needs to carry their own weight and everybody needs to change their organization from I don't know, a piece of paper type of an organization to a data-driven organization. Then you need to change the way content is created in your organization.
Now this is difficult, and it's probably, like you say, the most important part of the work, how the content is created and how this is shared later on. What about the management model? So you have the chatbot, you basically our company or any other company sets it up, and what's the management model? Is it like, yes, we got a platform and we are basically doing everyday job in this platform already, or how is it managed? So who will manage this platform?
So in Estonian government, we will have different options because the bot itself will be open source. You just download the code from GitHub at one point and set it up wherever in this box behind us, for example. That's the easiest way, but that needs that you need some technical competence to do that. But also we will have an option that State Information System Authority will have the way of setting it up and somehow managing it. For any other given country, you can choose your own, and that's one of the most difficult parts because the governance around this management of ICT usually is something that not all organizations can actually handle that. So I think for the rest of the world there can be several different options. It's either private sector providing it as a service, it's either some entity in a government providing some baseline technical competence as a kind of a central thing. In Estonia, again, we try to, and we believe in distributed model, which means that each entity will have their own bot in their own domain, in their own little box.
But it's a standardized protocol, how those bots will communicate.
That's the main innovation about KrattAI and bureaucrat. It's about actually having a way how a network of 1,000 different bots can communicate with each other, and that needs to be kind of agreed in a central way, so that we know that hey, we guys here speak English, but otherwise when I see you before we was talking Estonian.
Sure. And now I throw up an idea of offering this sort of network of chatbots or a framework for any given country, any given department. Can we do it together? basically, can we go into a proof of concept with the existing Estonian model for any other country and department?
Yes. After the pilot and testing in Estonia has been successful, then definitely we can share this to the whole world. And in order to do that, the government of Estonia is also working with International Telecommunication Union. We are building, it's a project called Building Blocks for SDGs, which means that basically we're building software. We are building an e-government standard that basically could be utilized across the whole planet, and this chatbot will definitely be part of that toolbox. So the standard will consist of small building blocks for governments to provide e-government services, but the chatbot definitely will become one very important component in this toolbox, because in order to make a kind of a leap in the way that governments deliver their services, for example in Africa, where most people only have their mobile phones, if even that, then I think a chatbot can be very, very practical in delivering various kinds of governmental services, whether this is like how should I get to a hospital when there is one doctor to 100,000 people, and how can I get the time for this, for example, a very practical thing. Or I don't know, how to raise potatoes in Africa in an efficient way, and what's the know-how behind that. So there is various different questions, but definitely all of this technology will be open source, and through International Telecommunication Union, or ITU, we are packaging it in a way so that all governments on this planet can actually utilize from the know-how and the case studies, and we will write up some explanations and experience. Probably we will make a network where government officials can actually exchange their experience, right, the pros and cons, the mistakes, and how can we even, together with the whole planet, basically make this network of chatbots even better.
So you're talking about a shopping mall for digital services for governments, basically that you can go and pick and then set up yourself, but perhaps with the help of Estonian experience and the Estonian companies. So are you ready to fly to any of the countries who are interested and set this service up?
So my main mission still is to help people here in Estonia. So currently not yet, but I think we would be ready to deploy this technology globally, yeah, let's say in half a year or even 1 year, we would be ready. It starts with probably with some smaller use cases, some practicalities, but I think the true impact of this technology will emerge much later, when the network has been deployed, when the culture of bureaucrats have altered a bit, and also when the end users or humans, when they have got accustomed to using, to communicating with the government through such a channel, for example. And I think that's the most interesting parts of this technology, and the vision kind of, I think it will de facto emerge in about 10 to 15 years. Well, when, for example, the government of Estonia, our goal is to automate basically 95% of all routine bureaucracy within the next 10 years. Right. Can you imagine a government without bureaucracy? Like currently, you need to have bureaucracy because you need to have equal service standards.
Exactly, you have to have due procedures for delivering the service.
Yeah, but if you can actually automate all of that routine bureaucracy and also have the interface in a human-centric way, then I think we will be able to actually redefine what the government is. Like in current modern governance, you have bureaucracy. But what the KrattAI is doing, and what's the big thing for Estonia is it's offering us an option to actually redefine how governments actually work.
Hey, now we're tapping into also the government's work itself. Yeah. So how government should change, or how government should utilize AI for its own internal procedures. So basically, if you want to create a new piece of law or legislation, then how would you do it if you are a smart government? Would you have a similar sort of maybe a bot that will help you to guide through this legislative drafting process, or how about that?
So yes, in terms of the legislative process, bots can help a lot, but still, legislative process fundamentally it's human driven, because this is an agreement that we do in a society, that in this country we do things like this. Purely from a technical point of view, what's interesting for me is to have, when you make an agreement in a society as a law, that I don't know, in Estonia we do things like this. It would be super interesting to see machine readable laws. It would be super interesting to see parametric laws.
Explain this, please.
Machine readable laws basically mean that the legal text itself would have a component that is machine readable, which would mean that all of the network of different artificial intelligence bots or chatbots or whatever narrow AI application that kind of relate to this law. So those bots can actually automatically read the law. So some sort of parameters are automatically inserted into the bot themselves, so that they could change decisions on basically use case by use case. Because currently in legal systems usually have this kind of a blanket mentality, which means that we put the whole blanket to all of us. For example, that I don't know, when I would go to Finland and come back, I need to have 14 days in self-quarantine. Right. Like everybody has to do that. If we would have parametric machine readable laws, then the potential would be that, okay, those people who actually have been through COVID-19 and have antibodies in their blood, and they have a test to prove that they do have those antibodies, then they don't need to do that. That's not for them. But you can yeah. What it means is that you can fully customize all of the decision making to a particular individual and for their unique use case. Each of the practical enforcement of the law would be tailor-made to that particular person, their specific requirements. And I think that is something that artificial intelligence can fully do, because if you're talking about building a fully human-centric society, then like if the private sector services nowadays are basically tailor-made to your performances, right, why shouldn't the government?
Just now to narrow down on this current project that we have, it's between the two governmental bodies who will be served with a bot that can actually decide for which governmental body this question is addressed. Now it's almost done. So what will a citizen get from this project?
So the first, the pilot, is addressing actually very, very, very simple and practical problems. So I don't know, when a person is in a traffic accident and connects to the police bot, for example, then the bot can actually assist him or her in that particular need. So we're addressing very narrow, simple problems. But again, we're also testing the hypothesis that the bot framework can actually work in this way. So the next years will be fundamental in actually building the network, actually providing the content to the bots, and changing the culture in the public sector and the society how to communicate with. But again, in Estonia we start with small practical steps which are already almost finished, and we're just hoping that we can actually deploy this framework of bots in a much wider domain as well.
So, just to close up, what would be your best guess? What sort of service would this bot deliver for you or for your?
For me as a citizen, I would actually really would like to do that. I would never have to communicate with the government ever again if I don't want to. There are some places where I would like to, but which it's because this is interesting for me. But in terms of providing the routine necessary things, I would like everything to be automated. And I think we can actually provide a government like that in Estonia across all governmental services, let's say in 10 years.
That's a good promise.
Yes.
So thank you, Martin, for joining us at NetGroup. Would you recommend any of our audience who are interested to actually log into some of the websites that can provide more information about this topic?
So I think the most important website usually is estonia.com. That's the place where all of the different e-government solutions from Estonia are kind of gathered, and from that network, if you're interested either in the bot or anything else, there is links, there is potential companies that deal with these things, potential solutions. So I think the best place to start is estonia.com.
That's good. Thank you for this information. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
As a source of inspiration, you can also have a look at the NetGroup's Insight Library, where we have a different sort of use cases for you to have a look and to get inspired from.